seem of any particular use at the moment. He did not go much further, but sat down on the cold floor and gave himself up to complete miserableness. He thought to himself, frying bacon and eggs in his own kitchen at home, for he could feel inside that it was a high time for some meal or other, but that only made him more miserable. He could not think what to do, nor could he think what had happened or why he had been left behind or why, if he had been, the goblins had caught him at all, or even if his head was so sore. The truth was he had been lying quiet, out of sight, and out of mind in a very dark corner for a long while. After some time, he felt for his pipe. It was not broken, and that was something. Then he felt for his pouch, and there was some tobacco in it, and that was something more. Then he felt for matches, and he could not find any at all, and that shattered his hopes completely. Just as well for him, as he agreed when he came to his senses. Goodness knows what the striking of matches and smell of tobacco would have brought him on a dark hole in the horrible place. Still, at that moment he felt very crushed. But in slapping all his pockets and feeling all around himself for matches, his hand came on this hilt of this little sword, this little dagger that he had gotten from the trolls, that he had quite forgotten. Now, fortunately, had the goblins noticed it, as he wore it inside his breeches. Now he drew it out. It shone pale and dim before his eyes. So it is an elvish blade, too, he thought, and goblins are not very near, and yet not far enough. But somehow he was comforted. It was rather splendid to be wearing a blade made in Condloin, for the goblin wars of which so many songs had sung, and also had noticed that such weapons made a great impression on goblins that came up them suddenly. Go back, he thought. No good at all. Go sideways. Impossible. Go forward. Only thing to do. On we go. So up he got and trotted along with his little sword held in front of him, and one hand feeling the wall, and the heart all of a batter and a bitter. Now certainly Bilbo was in quite called a tight space, but you remember it was not quite so tight for him as it would have been for me or you. Hobbits are not quite like ordinary people, and after all, if their holes are nicely cheery places and properly aired, quite different from the tunnels of the goblins, still they are more used to tunneling than we are, and they do not easily lose their sense of direction underground, not when their heads have recovered from being bumped. Also, they can move very quietly and hide easily and recover wonderfully from falls and bruises, and they have a fund of wisdom and wise sayings that men have mostly never heard or have forgotten long ago. I should not have liked to have been in Mr. Baggins's place, all the same. The tunnel seemed to have no end. All he knew was that it was still going down pretty steadily and keeping in the same direction in spite of a twist and a turn or two. There were passengers leading off to the side every now and then, as he knew by the glimmer of his sword, or could feel with his hands on the don't swim, and he thought two nasty, slimy things with big, bulging, blind eyes wriggling in the water. There are strange things living in the pools, and the lakes and the hearts of the mountains. Fish whose fathers swam in, goodness only knows how many, many years ago, and never swam out again, while their eyes grew bigger and bigger and bigger from trying to see in the blackness. Also, there are other things more was anxious to agree until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You ask first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle, so Gollum hissed. "What has roots, as nobody sees, is taller than trees. Up, up it goes, and yet never grows." "Easy," said Bilbo. "Mountain, I suppose." "Does it guess easily? It must have a competition with us, my precious. If Precious asks and it doesn't answer, we eats him, my precious. If it asks us and we don't answer, then we does what it wants, yeah? We shows up in the way out, yes." "All right," said Bilbo, not daring to disagree, and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could have saved him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hall. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. "Chestnuts, chestnuts he is, teeth, teeth, my precious, but only has 6. Then he asked his second. Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mothers." "Half a moment," cried Bilbo, who was thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting its whiz back, thought of the answer. "Wind, wind, of course," he said, and he was so pleased he made up one on the spot. "They'll puzzle the nasty little underground creature," he thought. "An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like this eye," said the first eye, "but in a low place, not in a high place." Said Gollum. He had been underground a long time ago, and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope that the wretched would not be able to answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before we lived, and his grandmother in a hole in a bank by a river. "Shh, my precious," he said. "Sun on the daisies, it means it does." But these ordinary above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days that he had less been lonely and sneaky and nasty, that put him out of temper. What is more, that made him hungry, so this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. It came to be seen, cannot be found. It cannot be heard, cannot be smelt. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first, it follows after, ends life, kills laughter. Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was right round him anyway. "Dark," he said, without even scratching his head or putting on his thinking cap. "A box without hinges, key, or lid, yet golden treasure inside is hid." He asked to gain time until he could think of a really hard one. This, he thought, a dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked it in the usual words, but it provided a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and he still did not know the answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some while, Bilbo became impatient. "Well, what is it?" he said. "The answer is not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you're making. Give us a chance. Let it give us a chance, my precious." "Well," said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance, "what about your guess?" But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving from nests long ago, and sitting under the river bank teaching his grandmother to suck eggs. He hissed, "Eggs," he said. Then he asked, "Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking." He also in this turn thought it was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer, but he could Is it juicy? Is it scrumptiously crunchable? He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. Half a moment, said the hobbit, shivering. I gave you a good long chance just now. It must make haste, said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get at Bilbo. But when he put his long, webby foot in the water, a fish jumped out in a fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. Ugh, he said, it's so cold and clammy, and so he guessed, fish. Fish, he cried, it's fish. Gollum was dreadfully disappointed, but Bilbo asked another riddle as quick as he ever could, so that Gollum had to go back into his boat and not think. No legs, lay on one leg, 2 legs, sat near on 3 legs, 4 legs, got some. It was not really the right time for his riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have some trouble guessing it if he had asked it another time. As it was, talking of fish, no legs was not so very different, and after that the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at sitting table on the stool, the cat has the bones. That, of course, is the answer, said Gollum, soon gave it. Then, he thought the same time, had come to ask something harder and horrible, and this is what he said. This is all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays kings, ruins towns, and beats high mountain down. Poor Bilbo sat in the dark thinking of all the horrible names of all the giants and the ogres he had ever heard the stories of in tales, but not one of them had done all these things. He had a feeling that the answer was quite different, and that he ought to know it, but he could not think of it. He began to get frightened, and that's bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat. He flapped into the water and paddled to the pink. Bilbo could see his eyes coming toward him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout, give me more time, give me more time. But all that came out with a sudden squeal was, time, time. Bilbo was saved by pure luck, for that, of course, was the answer. Gollum was disappointed once more, and now he was getting angry and tired of games. It had made him very hungry indeed. This time he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo. That made the hobbit more dreadfully uncomfortable and scattered his wits. It's got to ask us a question, my precious. Yes, just one more question to guess, said Gollum. But Bilbo simply could not think of any questions with that nasty wet cold thing sitting next to him and pawing and poking him. He scratched himself, he pinched himself, still he could not think of anything. Ask us, said Gollum. Bilbo pinched himself and slapped himself. He gripped on his little sword. He even felt his pocket with his other hand. There he found the ring he had picked up in the passage and forgotten about it. What have I got in my pocket? He said aloud. He was thinking to himself, but Gollum thought it was a riddle, and he was frightfully upset. Not fair, he hissed. It isn't fair, my precious, is it, to ask what it's got in its nasty little pockets is? Bilbo, seeing what had happened and having nothing better to ask, stuck to his question. What have I got in my pocket? He said, louder. Shh, hissed Gollum. It must give us 3 guesses, my preciouses, 3 guesses. Very well, guess away, said Bilbo. Handses, said Gollum. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had luckily just taken his hand out again. Guess again. Shh, said Gollum, more upset than ever. He thought of all the things he kept in his own pockets, fish bones, goblin's teeth, wet shells, and a bit of bat wing, a sharp stone to sharpen his fangs, and other nasty things. He tried to think what other people kept in their pockets. Knife, he said at last. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had lost his some time ago. Last guess. Now Gollum was in a much more worse state from when Bilbo had asked him the egg question. He hissed and spluttered and rocked himself backwards and forwards and slapped his feet on the floor and wriggled and squirmed. But still, he did not dare to waste his last guess. precious, but not nothing. Oh no, Gollum. Never you mind, said Bilbo. A promise is a promise. Cross it is, impatient Precious hissed. But it must wait, yes it must. We can't go up the tunnels so hasty. We must go and get some things first, yes, things to help us. Well, hurry up, said Bilbo, relieved to think of Gollum going away. He thought he was just making an excuse and did not mean to come back. What was Gollum talking about? What useful thing could he keep out in the dark lake? But he was wrong. Gollum did mean to come back. He was angry now and hungry, and he was a miserable, wicked creature, and already knew he had a plan. Not far away, his island of Bilbo knew nothing, and there is nothing in his hiding place. He kept a few wretched oddments, and one very beautiful thing, very, very beautiful and wonderful. He had a ring, a golden ring, a precious ring. My birthday present, he whispered to himself, as he had often done in the endless dark days. That's what he wants now, yes, he wants it. He wanted it because it was a ring of power, and if you slipped that ring on your finger, you were invisible. Only in the full sunlight could you be seen, and then only by your shadow, and that would be shaky and faint. My birthday present, it came to me on my birthday, my precious. So, he had always said to himself. But who knows how Gollum came by that present ages ago in the old days when such rings were still at large in the world. Perhaps even the master who ruled them could not even say that. Gollum used to wear it at first, till it tired him, and he kept it in his pouch next to his skin, till it galed at him, and now usually he hid it in a hole in a rock on his island, and was always going back to look at it. And sometimes he put it on when he could not bear to be parted from it any longer, or when he was very, very hungry and tired of fish. Then he would creep along dark passages looking for stray goblins. He might even venture into places where the torches were lit, and made his eyes pink and smart, for he would be safe. Oh yes, quite safe. No one would see him. No one would notice him, till he had his fingers on their throat. Only a few hours ago he had worn it and caught some small goblin imp. How it squeaked! He still had a bone or two left to gnaw, but he wanted something softer. Quite safe. Yes, he whispered to himself. It won't see us, will it, my precious? No, it won't see us. And its nasty little sword will be useless. Yes, quite. That is what was in his awakened little mind, as he slipped suddenly from Bilbo's side and flapped back to his boat and went off into the dark. Bilbo thought he had heard this the last time. Still, he waited a while, for he had no idea to find a way out alone. Suddenly, he heard a screech. It sent a shiver down his back. Gollum was cursing and wailing away in the gloom, not very far off by the sound of it. He was on his island, scrabbling here and there, searching and seeking in vain. Where is it? Where is it? Bilbo heard from crying. Lost it is, my precious, lost, lost. Curse us and crush us, my precious is lost. What's the matter? Bilbo called. What have you lost? It mustn't ask us, shrieked Gollum. Not its business, no, Gollum. It's lost, Gollum, Gollum, Gollum. Well, so am I, cried Bilbo, and I want to get unlost. And I won the game, and you promised. So come along, come and let me out, and then go out with your looking. Utterly miserable as Gollum sounded, Bilbo could not find much pity in his heart, and he had a feeling that anything Gollum wanted so much could hardly be something good. Come along, he shouted. No, not yet, precious, Gollum answered. We must search for it. It's lost, Gollum. But you never guessed my last question, and you promised, said Bilbo. Never guessed, said Gollum. Then suddenly, out of the gloom came a sharp hiss. What has it got in its pockets? Tell us that. It must tell first. As far as Bilbo knew, there was no particular reason why he should not tell. Gollum's mind had jumped to a guess quicker than his, naturally, for Gollum had brooded for ages on this one thing, and he was always afraid of it being stolen. But Bilbo was annoyed at the delay. After all, he had won the game pretty fairly at a horrible risk. Answers were to be guessed, not given, he said. But it wasn't a fair question, said Gollum, not a riddle, precious no. Oh well, if it's a matter of ordinary questions, Bilbo replied, then I asked one. What have you lost? Tell me that. What has it got in its pockets? The sound came hissing louder and sharper as he looked towards it. To his alarm, Bilbo now saw two small points of light peering at him. As suspicion grew in Gollum's mind, the light of his eyes burned with a pale flame. What have you lost? Bilbo persisted. But now the light in Gollum's eyes had become a green fire, and it was coming swiftly nearer. Gollum was in the boat again, paddling widely back to the dark shore, and such a rage of loss and suspicion was in his heart that no sword had any more terror for him. Bilbo could not guess what had maddened the wretched creature, but he saw that it was up, and that Gollum meant to murder him at any rate. Just in time, he turned and ran blindly back up the dark passage down which he had come, keeping close to the wall and feeling it with his left hand. What has it got in its pockets? He heard as loud behind him, and the splash as Gollum leapt from his boat. What have I wonder, he said to himself as he panted and stumbled along. He put his left hand in the pocket. The ring felt cold as it quietly slipped on its groping forefinger. The hiss was close behind him. He turned now and saw Gollum's eyes like small green laps coming the slope. Terrified, he tried to run faster, but suddenly he struck his toes on a snag in the floor and fell flat with his sword under him. In a moment, Gollum was on him, but before Bilbo could do anything, recover his breath, pick himself up, or wave his sword, Gollum passed by, taking no notice of him, cursing and whispering as he ran. What could I miss? Gollum could see in this dark. Bilbo could see the light of his eyes palely shining, even from behind. Painfully, he got up and sheathed the sword, which was now glowing faintly again. Then, very cautiously, he followed. There seemed nothing else to do. It was no good crawling back down Gollum's water. Perhaps if he followed him, Gollum might lead him to some way of escape without meaning to. Curse it, curse it, curse it, hissed Gollum. Curse the Baggins, it's gone. What has he got in its pockets? Oh, we guess, my precious, he found it. Yes, he must have my birthday present. Bilbo prickled up his ears. He was beginning to guess himself. He hurried a little, getting as close as he dared behind Gollum, who was still going quickly, not looking back, but turning his head from side to side, as Bilbo could not see from the faint glimmer on the walls. My birthday present, curse it. How did we lose it, my precious? Yes, that's it. When we came this way last, when we twisted that nasty young squeaker, that's it, curse it. It slipped from us after all these ages and ages. It's gone, Gollum. Suddenly, Gollum sat down and began to weep, a whistling and gargling sound horrible to listen to. Bilbo halted and flattened himself against the tunnel wall. After a while, Gollum stopped weeping and began to talk. He seemed to be having an argument with himself. It's no good going back there to Sir John. We doesn't remember all the places we visited, and it's no use. The Baggins has got it in his pockets. The nasty noser has found it, we says. We guesses, precious, only guesses. We can't know till we find the nasty creature and squeezes it, but it doesn't know what the present can do, does it? It'll just keep it in its pockets. It doesn't know, and it can't go far. It's lost itself, the nasty nosy thing. It doesn't know the way out. It said so. It said so, yes, but it's tricksy. It doesn't say what it means. It won't say what it's gone in its pockets. It knows a way in. It must know a way out, yes. It's off in the back door. To the back door, that's it. The goblins will catch him. Then I can't get out that way, precious. Shh, Gollum. Goblins yes. But it's got the present, our precious present, that goblins will get in Gollum. They'll find it. What it does. this is where, as Bilbo had noticed on the way down, side passages opened, and that's the way he went. Gollum began at once to count them. Once left, yes. Once right, yes. Two right, yes, yes. Two left, yes, yes. And so on and so on. As the count grew, he slowed down, and he began to get shaky and weepy, for he was leaving the water further and further behind as he was getting afraid. Goblins might be about, and he had lost his ring, as he noticed by a low opening on their left as they went up. 7 right, yes. 6 left, yes, he whispered. This is it. This is the way to the back door. Yes, here's the passage. He peered in and shrank back. But we doesn't go in. Precious, no, we doesn't. Goblins is down there. Lots of goblins is. We smell them. Shh. What shall we do? Curse them and crush them. We must wait here, Precious. Wait a bit and see. So they came to a dead stop. Gollum had brought Bilbo to the way out after all, but Bilbo could not get in. There was Gollum sitting humped up right in the opening, and his eyes gleamed cold in his head as he swayed it from side to side between his knees. Bilbo crept away from the wall more quietly than a mouse, but Gollum sniffled at once and sniffed, and his eyes went green. He hissed softly but menacingly. He could not see the Hobbit, but now he was on the alert. He had other senses that the darkness had sharpened, hearing and smell. He seemed to be crouched right down with his flat hands splayed on the floor, and his head thrust out, nose almost all the stones. Though he has only a black shadow in the gleam of his own eyes, Bilbo could see or feel that he was in a tense, as a bowstring gathered from a spring. Bilbo almost stopped breathing and went stiff himself. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness while he had any strength left. He must fight. He must stab the foul thing, put its eyes out, kill it. It meant to be killed him. No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him, or tried yet, and he was miserable alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. A glimpse of endless, unmarked days without light or hope of betterment. Hard stone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. All these thoughts passed in a flash of a second. He trembled, and then quite suddenly another flash, as if lifted by a new strength and resolve. He leaped. No great leap from a man, but a leap in the dark. Straight over Gollum's head he jumped, 7 feet forward and 3 in the air. Indeed, he had known it. It only just missed cracking his skull on the low arc of the passage. Gollum threw himself backwards and grabbed as the Hobbit flew over him, but too late. The hand snapped on thin air, and Bilbo, falling fair on the sturdy feet, sped off down to the next tunnel. He did not know the turn, what Gollum was doing. There was hissing and cursing almost at its heels at first, then it stopped. All at once, there came a blood-curdling shriek, filled with hatred and despair. Gollum was defeated. He dared go no further. He had lost his prey, and lost too the only thing he had ever cared for, his Precious. The cry brought Bilbo's heart to his mouth, but still he held on, now faint as an echo, but menacingly the voice came behind. Thief, thief, Baggins, we hates it, we hates it, we hates it forever. Then there was a silence, but that too seemed menacing to Bilbo. If goblins are near, he smelled them. He thought, then they'll have heard his shrieking and cursing. Careful now, or this way will lead you to worse things. The passage was low and roughly made. It was not too difficult for the Hobbit, except when, in spite of all care, he stubbed his poor toes again several times on nasty jagged stones in the floor. A bit low, for goblins, at least for the big ones, thought Bilbo, not knowing that even the big ones, the orcs of the mountains, go along a great speed, stooping low with their hands almost on the ground. Soon, the passage that had been sloping down began to go up again, and after a while it climbed steeply. That slowed Bilbo down. slope stopped. The passage turned a right corner and dipped down again, and there, at the bottom of a short incline, he saw, filtering around another corner, a glimpse of light. Not red light as of fire or lantern, but a pale out-of-doors sort of light. Then Bilbo began to run. Scuttling as fast as his legs would carry him, he turned the last corner and came suddenly right into the open space, where the light, after all that time in the dark, seemed dazingly bright. Really, it was only a leak of sunshine in through a doorway, where a great door, a stone door, was left standing open. Bilbo blinked, and then suddenly he saw the goblins. Goblins in full armor, with drawn swords, sitting just inside the door and watching it with wide eyes, watching the passage that led to it. They were aroused, alert, ready for anything. They saw him sooner than he saw them. Yes, they saw him. Whether it was an accident or at last a trick of the ring before it knew its master, it was not his finger. With yells of delight, the goblins rushed upon him. A pang of fear and loss, like an echo of Gollum's misery, smote Bilbo, and forgetting even to draw a sword, he struck his hands into his pockets, and there was the ring still in his left pocket, and it slipped on his finger. The goblins stopped short. They could not sign of him. He had vanished. They yelled twice as loud as before, but not so delightfully. "Where is it?" they cried. "Go back up the passage," some shouted. "This way," some yelled. "That way," others yelled. "Look out of the door below." The captain. Whistles blew, armor clashed, swords rattled, goblins cursed and swore and ran hither and thither, falling over one another, getting very angry. There was a terrible outrage to do and disturbance. Bilbo was dreadfully frightened, but he had the sense to understand what had happened and to sneak behind a big barrel which held drink for the goblins' guards, and so get out of the way and avoid being bumped and trampled into death or caught by feel. "I must get to the door. I must get to the door," he kept saying to himself, but it was a long time before he ventured to try. Then it was a horrible game of blind man's bluff. The place was full of goblins running about, and the poor little hobbit dodged the way and that way, was knocked over by a goblin who could not make out any sense of what bumped into him, scrambled away on all fours, slipped between the legs of the captain just in time, got up and ran for the door. It was still ajar, but a goblin had pushed it nearly to. Bilbo struggled, but he could not move it. He tried to squeeze through the crack. He squeezed, and he stuck. It was awful. His buttons had got wedged on the edge of the door, and the doorpost. He could see the outside into the open air, and there were a few steps running down into the narrow valley between tall mountains. The sun came out from behind a cloud and shone bright into the outside of the door, but he could not get through. Suddenly, one of the goblins inside shouted, "There's a shadow by the door. Something's outside." Bilbo's heart jumped into his mouth. He gave a terrific squirm. Bilbo's burst off in all directions. He was through, with a torn coat and a waistcoat, leaping down the steps like a goat, while bewildered goblins were still picking up his nice brass buttons on the doorstep. Of course, there soon came down after him, hooting and hallooing, and hunting around the trees, but they don't like the sun. It makes their legs wobble and their heads giddy. They could not find Bilbo, with the ring slipping in and out of the shadow of the trees, running quick and quiet, and keeping out of the sun. As soon as they went back, grumbling and cursing to guard the door, Bilbo had escaped. Okay, everyone. Thank you, friends, for listening in on The Hobbit, Chapter 5. We will be reading Chapter 6 next to see what happens to our Hobbit. I hope you've enjoyed this cozy, slow, comfortable, soft reading of The Hobbit. And I'll see you guys next time.